Greetings. Today I'm going to talk about Nudge, and this is Nudge. It is a application you use to nudge people into updating their OSs. If you're not managing Macs in an enterprise environment, stop watching now. Okay, so in this box, when people click how to update Nudge, it brings them to the documentation that tells them to open up self-service and run the update. Self-service is part of the Jamf software server, which is the MDM we're using in this tutorial. So when the action button is pressed, in this case the update button, it opens up self-service, runs the update to Sequoia policy, which we're using the erase install update workflow for, and the user authenticates. They have a token, they download the operating system, and then they update. So this is a plain Jane Nudge configuration, and in this tutorial I'm going to talk about why I think that's the best for the organizations I do macOS system administration for, and why I think it could work for yours. This tutorial will also be good if you want to do some sharing and comparing from your Nudge setup to mine, or if you've never set up Nudge before and you're looking to get started using this tool to help get folks updated. In my user environment, about 25% of my users have updated to the OS in 7 weeks after it's been published, and I need to get that to 100, just like everybody. And Nudge is the tool I'm going to use to do that. So that's what we're going to talk about today. This is a deep dive. We're going to get deep. We're going to get technical. So get a good cup of coffee and let's get started. So we just saw the demo computer update with Nudge. We've logged back in and we verified that it's on the newest version of macOS Sequoia 15.0.1 at the time of this test, October 22nd, 9:24 a.m. Let's talk about the back end. This is the most important piece of Nudge, and it's going to get you started, and that's its GitHub repo. Now they're on to version 2 point something, and I actually worked to deploy 2 point something in a lab environment this year, and ultimately decided to stay on version 1.1.16, which is why I'm going to that in this tutorial and downloading it. And the key reason I'm using this older release version is because I really think that simple's better. At its core, Nudge is just getting the user, prompting the user to update. And so to get this, you're going to get on GitHub, you're going to find Nudge, and you're going to download the Nudge suite into your downloads folder. And then you're going to upload that to your MDM, in this case, the Jamf software server. I'm not going to show the upload process. However, I did show the download. I'll talk later about why I like the older version better than the newer one. Now, erase install. Graham is now working at Jamf. This software changed macOS system administration for the better, because Mac can't do this on their own well, and it's on version 36 now. So you want to check and get that downloaded and then uploaded to your Jamf. And then here's the Mac admin Slack on the Nudge Jamf channel, and this is where you're going to go to get support. So if you're watching the workflows in this video, you're reading the wiki, and you're still getting stuck, search for what you're looking for in these channels, and then post if you can't find what you're looking for by searching the post history. And if you're lucky, a Mac admin, there's a lot of nice people out here, will help you for free, and you can just get your computers updated with their help. I ran into some problems trying to figure this out, and I've been doing this a while. By no means am I an expert, but I would say that I'm pretty solid at this job, and there's still people who are much better at it than me in the open source community who are willing to help me out. So that was a great place to go. All right, the next thing that's really important is that you understand the how Apple uses secure tokens, secure token, bootstrap token, and volume ownership in deployments. Go ahead and pause the video, pull up this article by Googling the title, and then block an hour of time on your calendar to read it and play with it in a lab environment. The core of what it's saying is that secure tokens are encryption keys, and they are generated during user creation, so that could be at the MDM level, or when the first person logs in, right? And then there's all these little command line tools you can use to make sure a user has a token, which they need to have in order to update the computer. So you need to know how that stuff works, and your users need tokens. That's why I show that. Okay, now we're back in Jamf, and we're looking at my erase install policy, right? And you can use this to erase a computer. You can use this to update a computer. It's great for automating. In this case, we're looking, okay, the package is the latest version, so that's good. And overwrite. Okay, actually, it looks like this is the policy. Here's where it's scoped. It's scoped to everything. This is the policy to erase the computer. Okay, you would never put this in nudge, right? If you put this in nudge, people would be nudged to erase their own computers. That would be bad. But I do have this policy in my self-service. I just clicked on it as a mistake while I was recording the screen for this. It shows a nuclear option, and this is great for doing exactly what it says, erasing computers. And those are the options for it. So that's more fun to know. Let's pull up the policy we actually need to use in our nudge configuration. Okay, in our title of our policy, it says what it does. Erase install, reinstall. For macOS, it's going to update to Sequoia workflow. So that's what we want. Here's our options. Let's slow those down a little bit. I went too fast. In our general section, the display name says what it is. Next, it's enabled. Before we click in that package, let's look at what we got here. Site, none, but you may choose a site. Category, utilities. Trigger, got nothing checked. We want this to trigger at a self-service opening, right? So we don't have anything there. And then the frequency is ongoing, so people could update over and over again. And then we have this script here, and it's gonna do a post-install script that downloads the latest available macOS and reinstalling the OS without wiping. So that is the script, and you can put parameters in the script. Guess where you find this script? You got it, GitHub, right? On the erase install GitHub. We'll take a look at this script real quick so you can see what I got in it and the way I have it configured. Just do a little share and compare. Scrolling down, we got nothing else going on in our options here. So before we look at the script, we can check out the other parts of this configuration, and I'm double clicking in this column to make sure I got nothing else besides my script, because there's a lot of ways you can use erase install, and I have a handful of policies for that besides automating updates. Okay, scope, basically the whole fleet with static and smart groups. And then self-service, right? Ultimately, you don't want to use nudge if you don't have to, but you're probably going to have to. Ideally, you send an email to staff letting them know to go here and run this policy. When the majority of them do not do that, you're going to take this policy URL, the installation URL. This one has the number 328 in it. Yours will have its own number. You're going to copy that and you are going to paste it into your configuration profile for your nudge. So that way, when people press the action button and nudge, it opens self-service and runs this policy. That is the plain Jane configuration concept we're going for here. It's so important. You don't need, in my opinion, to give people timers, to give people countdowns. They need to update. They're adults, they're professionals, and the easiest way to update, in my opinion, is to use erase install with the update options through self-service. It's the easiest way to automate. So that's what we do. All right. We're at our settings, computer management scripts, and we've opened up the erase install script. And what this does, you can see in our options what it's going to do. It's going to update, reinstall, full installer, wait for power, make sure that laptop's plugged in for 180 seconds, and then post install, it's going to run Jamp recon. So once it installs, it's going to recon back to Jamp and let that software server know that that computer's updated. Beautiful, right? So we include that in this policy. It's got the PKG and it's got the post install script with the options we want, which means that the computer's plugged in, downloads the full installer, and it reports that information back to Jamp. Okay. Make this available to everybody after testing. You always test. And let's talk about a smart group here just to do our due diligence. If you know this, press that right arrow key to fast forward. If you're learning, you may need to pause and slow down. Okay, so currently we have a smart group with some Boolean logic here, or some might say regular expression. Criteria is operating system version is greater than or equal to 15. Well, let's say for hypothetical sense, we wanted to target the updates for macOS 15 to computers that were on 14, right? We could set this to a different value. Instead of changing this one specifically, we'll save it out, and then let's go ahead and clone it and make another one. So Control-Shift-In, or your mouse, you can choose clone. And in this case, we will change our value to 14.0, change our name, 14, copy, delete that, save it out. And we can view what computers go into the scope and see which computers are greater than 14. And we can see that we have a lot of computers that are greater than 14. So that's kind of the opposite of what we want, right? We need to change this a little bit. We will go ahead and go back to our smart group criteria, edit it again, and let's see what our options are. Perhaps less than or equal to 14 will be good, right? Because now we're looking down in history. But let's make it 15, right? 15.7 maybe? So this will cover us going forward as Apple releases their releases through 15.7, but also get us going back. All the way back into our fleet to any computer that's not working, because nudge can still be used for these point updates, right? 15.1, 15.2, 15.3, etc. And now when we look, we got a whole bunch of computers in this scope, right? So this one's pretty nice. It looks forward, it looks back. Anyway, that's a few different ways to look at smart groups. Hopefully one of those will work best in your network environment. Play around with them and choose what works best for you. The next part of our nudge configuration is a configuration profile. So if you've never done this before, you're going to need to create a new one. We're just going to look at mine that I already have created. So the general thing shows what it is. It's a nudge suite and the version we're using, 1.1.16. Categories testing. We're going to go ahead and move that into utilities because this is coming out of testing. Here we have a custom schema. We've added this preference domain. That preference domain is important. Let's go back and look at that. All this is on GitHub in the wiki though, so take a look at that. Getting this configuration profile is so important. So again, source custom schema, preference domain, com.github.macadmins.nudge, just like we have it here. I think even the in and nudge needs to be capitalized. Let me know what you think in the comments below. I'm actually not 100% sure. Okay, here's our preference domain properties. Where do we get this? Where is this template? If your gut says GitHub, it's right. So we can go to nudge, the root folder, and then we can look for our schemas, right? They're going to be here. And this is our schema. This is what we can copy and paste for Jamf. So we copy this file and we paste it in. That's what's pasted in here. Let's look at this in more detail. We've got our source, our preference domain. Talked about that uppercase N, still a little sus, as the younger generations say. Okay, configuration options. Acceptable screen sharing uses is configured to false. Aggressive user experience is configured to true. Asynchronous software update configured to false. In my opinion, nudge is a little too complicated for my use case, and I think a lot of use cases. All we really need to do is get people to update with a race install. But I'll keep talking through these just in case you're here for the share and compare as part of your own troubleshooting process. So some of these versions don't work with the current version I'm using, and they do note that in the options. That's really helpful. One thing that is absolutely critical though is these OS version requirements. And you can see you have an option for the about update URL, which defaults to nudge. I'm going to go ahead and edit that here and put in my how to update without nudge documentation. Because oftentimes in help desk we'll get folks asking, hey, how do we update without an admin password? At least in the old days when you needed that. I've still used that language though, because we're trying to push people to the self-service workflow. That said, if they update from system settings, fine. Update is an update. It just doesn't work that reliably, and this is what we're going for: stability, reliability, simplicity. So we want people to be able to look at a Google document, see a picture of an application they need to open, and press start. That's what this document shows. And I email this document to the users the day the operating system drops from Apple, so they can start then. I've beta tested it from in the summer when it's released after the development conference. I know it will work in our environment. If for some reason it doesn't, we've taken steps to address that, so we get our ducks in a row. The other thing we need to talk about here, this is the action button path. This is part of nudge that should never be changed in my opinion, because it allows us to choose an alternative action like a Jamf self-service item, which in this case is our erase install update policy. See that 328 from earlier? We pasted that in right there. And so that's what causes on the front end the user's self-service instance to application to open and run this policy. So nudge in its most simple setup for enterprise environments using Jamf, in my opinion, just needs this. You just need them to click a button to open self-service and click the button that you asked them to click over email months ago. And just to be extra thorough, here's a look at that policy in the self-service tab is where you copy and paste that over, right? So you can see them matching here. Okay, moving on. Required installation date. You can put that information in. I like to give folks lots of time, but again, this is not required. You do not need an installation date. Minimum version required. You do need this. If this is too low, it won't pop up, right? Nudge will not trigger, and that's bad, right? You'll be right where you started from. Allow grace periods, set to true, late deferral true, user quick deferrals false, allow deferrals 10, allow deferrals until forced secondary quit 14. So tons of options here. Again, in my opinion, none of these are necessary, but you do, because they're there, you want to go through them in testing in a lab environment. And on your lab computer, you can do an erase install option where you reinstall an older version of macOS so that you can continue testing the update specifically. You could also virtualize Mac on Intel and just keep updating that way. But make sure you do lab this out. It is complicated. Okay, there's our grace period, load agent, timers, interface. This is another Nudge 2.0 thing. In any case, that's all I got for you today. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you around.